echo, guys. You guys make sure you guys keep your on mute if you guys are not talking. Okay. I still hear echo. Can everyone hear me fine?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Hello, sir. Kindly share your screen.
Okay.
And sir, we are live now.
Can you guys see my screen okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Very good. So let's give up a minute or two and then we can start.
Sir, is everyone live now? Can I start?
In my list, I see few people. I think others can check.
Adarsh,
Sir,
please let us know.
yes, sir. You can start now. Many of the bank associates are busy in the festival preparation, and I have asked them to watch the video later.
Okay. All right, Vidhi, go ahead.
Okay, a very warm welcome to Galaxy of Intellectuals, Your Excellency, invited guests, and my dear friends. It's a wonderful day, and I feel privileged to extend my warm welcome to all present here. First of all, I would like to thank each and everyone for joining us for today's webinar. Well, I am Vidhi Gautam working as a business development associate at CyberEra, and on the behalf of a whole team, I shall be a host for this event. The main motive for this session is to know how to design and implement cybersecurity baseline. We feel honored to have with us BizSecure and one and only BizSecure India's regional partner CyberEra. Before we go further, I would like to introduce you all with BizSecure. BizSecure help companies bridge the gap between security and IT departments while meeting regulatory compliance requirements by managing company security and compliance risk and integrating remediation without the need to invest in expensive and complex tool or hiring additional resources. And our regional partner, CyberEra, is the fastest growing cyber and technology based community which provide training and learning in the field of ethical hacking and cybersecurity. Now, it's my great honor and pleasure to introduce our presenter, Mr. Vivek Sharma. He is a CEO and founder at BizSecure from CA, USA. Before we get started, if you have any queries during session, feel free to drop your queries in an open chat box. Without any further ado, we will turn the time over to you, sir. Please, sir.
Thank you so much, Vidhi. My pleasure to give this webinar to my Indian team. So guys, we will start with the basic information regarding design and implementation of cybersecurity baseline. Before I dive into a technical, I would love to make this session more interactive. Feel free to share your comments and also your feedback about this webinar. And if you have any questions, write in the messages or text or even reach out to others or Vidhi at CyberEra, who is our regional partner, key contacts in India. And before we dive into this design and implementation, I would like to understand your challenges. If you guys have any challenges, feel free to share your challenges in messages. And Vidhi and others can certainly help us to read those challenges, and we can also cover those challenges as well. So I will give few seconds to write your challenges. Okay. Uh, so we will start with the first question. How many of you use a cybersecurity or compliance framework today? So if you can answer out of these three choices, so A, use a cybersecurity framework, use a regulatory compliance framework, or do not use any framework to define your cybersecurity baseline. Cybersecurity baseline is equally important having cybersecurity appliances in your company. If you have a cybersecurity appliances in your company and those do not meet any kind of baseline or do not check against any baseline, so obviously that shows that how effectively those appliances will be working in your company can put you at a very high risk. Just to kind of elaborate on that, so if you have firewalls, other appliances, if they are not tuned well or they are not taking logs, it will be quite hard for you to troubleshoot while your company is at risk. So if there is any kind of a data compromise, you wouldn't be able to check logs, what has happened behind the scene in order to really investigate that incident. So it is very important to follow baseline compliance guidelines to kind of enable all those controls and enforce those policies in your organization. Now, if you guys have given all the answers, Vidhi, do we have any questions or answers in the messages?
No, sir, I
Okay.
don't have.
Okay.
I think others have.
Okay. Others? Others, do you have any question from any of the attendee? If not, then we will move to the next. So generally what practice we kind of take to start defining a cybersecurity baseline? Either we work with the third party vendor or we bring another audit company. So we start with the vuln scan or penetration testing, which is becoming a very standard practice to identify vulnerabilities in your company, which is a really good start. But that's not the full optimized approach to develop a cybersecurity program in your company. Vulnerability scan is a one portion of overall your cybersecurity program. You have to follow a guidelines, comes from CIS, NIST 853, ISO, depends upon your business nature. You can use those cybersecurity frameworks and compliance requirements if needed to develop your cybersecurity program. Now, some companies perform subjective audits, and subjective audits, obviously, it's not meeting all of your requirements, cybersecurity requirements. That could be only limited number of controls, which again leave you vulnerable, which could potentially have a huge impact on your business. We can also get you to visibility of risk, maturity, automated governance. That's the kind of goal we should have in our company, to kind of have a repeatable cycle for many different use cases, managing your third-party vendors, internal audit, internal risk assessments, and also manage your policies and procedures for your company. Now, challenges in cybersecurity design. So most of companies struggle with where they should start from, what baseline they should develop, and then generally they ended up starting a vuln scan, which is a very good start, as I mentioned before. And also many companies do not have a very good hold of their company security controls, their vendor solutions. All these areas companies generally face challenges in, and there are developed approaches which you can take to kind of address all these different areas to manage your internal audits, your assessments, your vendor risk management. Now, cybersecurity driver, right? Why do we need cybersecurity? It is very important to understand. Either the driver could be the cyber attacks. We are thinking that we might, get compromised at some point if our security is weak, or it could be a compliance requirements. We require to meet ISO requirements, or we require to meet PCI-DSS requirements if we process any kind of a credit card information or debit card information, or it's also important for business sustainability. So during this pandemic, a lot of small businesses failed to respond. And then just to kind of go a little bit more in detail, even big companies failed to respond because they never thought of this kind of scenario where they had to kind of, operate their business, having all employees working from home. So they did not have if I talk about specific technologies, their BCP controls kind of were not that strong. They did not kind of scope, their business continuity in a way so it can handle the load on their secondary connections, and the failovers did not work in many cases. So that ended up compromising many of big companies as well. So these could be a drivers. If you also are facing these challenges, I would highly recommend to work based on some sort of a frameworks, like either pick a NIST 853 or CIS controls. Depends on what you're trying to accomplish in your business. Is your goal to just to protect cyber attacks, or your goal is to meet compliance requirements, or your goal is to keep your business going? So out of these drivers, if any of these drivers apply to you, or even all these applies to you, you should certainly, I will highly recommend you to use cybersecurity frameworks and develop your baseline. Once you develop your baseline, it's going to be a cycle where you assess the gaps, what the risks are, and then address, remediate those risks, and then reassess those risks. So it is going to be like a cycle, and this cybersecurity program you have to manage in order to track your cybersecurity maturity and compliance completeness. If you do not follow this cycle, obviously you're going to have some issues, and we'll talk about those things in a minute. So now we are getting to our next question, which is, how many of you have a cybersecurity baseline? So you guys can pick any of these options. Use defined cybersecurity baseline, use cybersecurity controls baseline, or do not use any baseline. So feel free to write in comments, and we will certainly get back to you. If you watch this video later, please still feel free to write your comments and answer of these questions. We will certainly circle back with you to answer your questions. Now, importance of baseline. So it could be number of controls, security controls, depends upon how sensitive information you have, what you're trying to accomplish with that, around that information. Are you trying to have some sort of a access controls, some kind of a BCP controls, which are more focused on the disaster recovery, business continuity, and also some controls around privacy as well. So nowadays, privacy becoming a really big issue in many countries, right? So we want to keep our personal information protected as well. So if you deal with any sort of a sensitive information and also some personal information, it is time to kind of classify your data. And once you have done classification of your data, that will give you a kind of a big picture that what data you need to protect, what data you need to classify. If you have any kind of vendors, how to classify your vendors. And based on all that information, you can pick and choose controls, define your company policies, and also process and procedures. It is very important to first develop a baseline. If you do not have a baseline, you would not be able to track a progress, which is the most important thing. Finding gaps, there are 10 different ways. You can use a vulnerability scanner. You can use many different tools. You can run a penetration testing. You can also use many different other methods or tools to find problems in your companies. But if you do not address those or remediate those gaps, your company still stays vulnerable. You might have heard that many big companies are getting compromised. Zoom got compromised. The Target, which is a very big retail store in the United States, that got compromised. Anthem Insurance Company got compromised. Many other big names got compromised. That is not happening because they do not have a right security appliances or right resources in-house. They have those, but there are some other areas which needs to be improved. Having a very strong governance, and we will talk in a minute on that, it's equally important having a baseline. So obviously the first step should be to have a very strong your security baseline, and then how to manage that baseline, how to remediate gaps, how to find gaps, how to assess those gaps. That becomes overall your cybersecurity program. Now, another question, how many of you perform a periodic assessment? Now, it is very important, right? So once you find a gaps, like you run a vulnerability scan and or you perform other security assessment based on any best practices, once you find a gaps, you even lose a hope because remediation is not getting anywhere, right? So first, let me hear from you. Give your answer, like you run assessment quarterly or every year, or do not do assessment ever. And obviously, running an assessment is very, very important, and we will cover that in this slide. What are the kind of benefits having your periodic assessments? So if you do not kind of periodically check and balance your baseline, you wouldn't know what has happened and what were the gaps and how those gaps are actually getting fixed. And if you, once you fix those gaps and you cannot track your maturity progress and see where we are getting from your baseline standpoint, and that way you wouldn't be able to really track progress at all. So it is very, very important to run your periodic assessments. And sometimes people even have ad hoc assessments as well, which gives them a clear understanding that, okay, how much progress they're making quarterly, how much progress they're making yearly. And it becomes a very important for key executives because they are spending a lot of budgets nowadays on cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is not to just to protect your customers' information or sensitive information. It is nowadays important to run your business. If you do not have a cybersecurity or any kind of a compliance baseline in your company, you wouldn't be able to operate, because once you get compromised, it's going to ruin your reputation. It's not going to keep you operational to continue your business. And once, it takes a blood and sweat to, establish your company, take from here to here. And if, all that hard work goes to waste, obviously it is definitely worth to spend some time to, have some sort of a cybersecurity program in your company. If you do not have it, it is very important, and many companies regret big time, especially when they could not respond during this pandemic, COVID-19. Many companies actually failed and went out of business just because they did not have any baseline. They were just doing everything on the fly, just getting a wound scan done, getting a penetration done, getting a very subjective audit, having a policies, but not making sure how effectively the security controls are working in your organization. Actually put you at a very, very high risk. It is very important to ensure that appliances we have in place, the policies we have enforced in our company, the process and the procedures we have, how effectively those are working. In many of my assessments in the past in US, we have identified where they had a lot of latest and greatest appliances, and their firewall policies, their IPS-IDS policies, the way the design were set up, it wasn't working that great. So obviously that put them at a very high risk, and some companies had some incidents as well. So it is very important to kind of continue this cycle and have some sort of a cybersecurity or information security program in your company based on that baseline you pick for your company. Okay, now plan for remediation. Why remediation is important? right? So as I mentioned, finding gaps are completely fine, right? So now you know all the problems. It's just like knowing all the problems we have in our body, and we kind of go for our health check every year, and now we know, okay, we our cholesterols are high, we have these issues, we have a diabetes and all that kind of stuff, and do not really do anything about it, right? Just looking at our report, oh yeah, these cholesterols are bad, they are on my bad side, diabetes is bad. So all those things we know, but we're still eating all the sweets coming in, especially during a Diwali Indian festival. It's pretty big, right? So all that kind of junk food we are eating, like pizzas, burgers, and all that kind of food, which is kind of putting our life at a very high risk. It is just like finding out all the vulnerabilities and not able to have any sort of a governance over our remediation plans, and there isn't any owners of remediations or proper tracking. There is no automation in remediation. There is a very, very big gap. The Once you identify security, put their blood and sweat to find gaps, and then how IT effectively address those gaps is actually equally important, because they are going to determine how secure your environment is. And remember, IT people not necessarily going to know how to remediate every security and compliance issue. There has to be someone who can interpret all the security and compliance gaps to IT. Otherwise, IT always going to struggle to understand what compliance requirements are, what security requirements, what exactly they want us to do, right? As an admin, on the network side or application side or operation side, if I do not know what I need to really tweak on my end, what process and what procedures I need to put in place, now what configuration changes I need to make, which can satisfy all the cybersecurity and compliance requirements, really we're not getting anywhere. So it's a very important having a infosec department, finding all the gaps. If you share IT and the security people in your organization, then you want to ensure, then now it's kind of finding gaps, same people, addressing those gaps are same people, and saying that those gaps are addressed are also same people. I would say conduct a third-party audit, third-party assessment. It's equally important if you have a very small team, because that team can certainly work in conjunction with you and help you to fix and remediate some problems, which can keep your business out of risk and also keep your business operational. So that's putting a remediation plan, how to get things fixed, and who's on the end side is making progress, like if the changes are being made, and this whole cycle should be in automation fashion. Now that time has gone where we used to manage everything with the spreadsheets. We have a very nice spreadsheet listed all of our controls, policies, and all that kind of stuff. That time has gone, and now we're trying to on our spreadsheet, trying to manage all different vulnerabilities, all different problems, all policies and procedures, and also now we're also trying to manage remediation efforts on that spreadsheet. Doing that and tracking that effort manually, it is not technically feasible nowadays, because there are so many different components in the company which you have to pay attention to in order to continue your security maturity progress. I'm emphasizing on this a lot because even big companies are experiencing same issues, especially that is actually a really, really big challenge in the big companies. In small companies, you still have an opportunity because those teams are still connected. It's not the segregation of duties is not that kind of a big of a problem in there. So everyone can work in a team and also make a lot of remediation efforts and progress. But putting a right plan together and also executing it right and tracking it right? If we are getting few things fixed on the network side, application side, operation side, legal side, HR side, marketing side, because nowadays, marketing is also a really big challenge. Who to GDPR also, kind of raise a lot of red flags. Who to reach out to? Do we have a consent from a lot of people or not? So all those things, right, coming in a consideration now. I'm in California, in a Silicon Valley here. So we kind of implemented a CCPA, which is a California privacy law. It's a kind of similar to GDPR in Europe, right? So now New York also launched and came up with the NY Shield. And I'm sure remaining 48 states are also going to come up with similar to GDPR, CCPA, NY Shield, which has to do with the privacy as well. So now, while defining our baseline, and now we actually need to define our baseline, kind of merge it together, where we're not only talking about cybersecurity compliance, but also talking about privacy. Still, people didn't get a good control over cybersecurity and compliance, but now new laws are coming out there for privacy. So now a lot of people, actually key executives, are literally going crazy because they do not have actually a very solid program which can handle cybersecurity and compliance. On top of that, now the privacy is coming out, and it is going to get really, really popular in all the other countries as well. If you're watching in India, I'm sure privacy laws are coming very soon. And you have to combine these all three things in order to develop a very solid baseline. Now, why baseline is important? Again, I'm going back to the same point, because in order to grow your business, in order to win a trust from your current customers and new customers, if you just show them how sophisticated you are in managing your cybersecurity program and the compliance program and the privacy program, you're gonna win so many customers, new customers, or even existing customers gonna give you more business. You're gonna get more references as well. If you are strengthen your cybersecurity program, it is very, very important, because other companies putting themselves at risk by working with you. If your company cybersecurity program is not good, or it doesn't even exist, then obviously they are at risk at the same time. And a majority of cyber attacks have happened through a third-party connection, where we have given very kind of a wide access to our third parties, where they just needed to access certain information. We just kind of gave them access via VPN or many different technologies, and even set it up an internal machine for them, which is actually wide open internally. And only what they really needed is actually to having a very limited access to one application to serve you as a partner. But by giving a wide access, now they were vulnerable, they were too small, and then it actually impacted their big partner as well, and they lost a business, which kind of is not a good thing, right? So putting a very strong remediation plan will show everyone that how much progress you're making and how close you are getting to meet all the cybersecurity, compliance, and privacy requirement. Now, reassess and track maturity progress, right? Cybersecurity and compliance maturity, these are two different things. Obviously, cybersecurity is a very small subset of compliance maturity, right? So compliance obviously covers a lot more. Nowadays, cybersecurity is becoming subset of all these compliances, right? So ISO has 27001, which is focused on cybersecurity and information security. Same thing goes for PCI-DSS, which is focused on all the cybersecurity controls. You can also pick NIST CSF, which is cybersecurity, US cybersecurity framework as well. Now the new one is coming up, which is CMMC, which is only focused on cybersecurity maturity model. So all these things are actually there to kind of follow and mature those cybersecurity and compliance framework. Now, if you do not define your baseline, how can you track your maturity, right? Once you define a baseline, once you know, okay, this is what we really need to follow, and this is where we are, it's important to assess and then obviously see, fix those problems and then reassess those problems and then track the maturity, right? If you do not track a maturity, so it's simply no maturity equals to no security equals to a data breach. So remember that if you're not getting mature in your cybersecurity program, that means you are actually most likely going to compromise either today or tomorrow. So just having a kind of a peace of mind and good sleep, if you're accountable for cybersecurity, then I will highly recommend you to kind of have a very strong program in your company. Now, importance of governance, right? It is just like, continue putting in efforts to finding gaps and not getting kind of a good trackability of those fixes. Now, governance is something like right now, in our country, we have a government, right? Government role is actually having a governance, right? So if imagine there are no tickets for red light jumps, like in US, like if you jump a red light, there are cameras, take pictures and send it out, a ticket to home, and everyone follows because there isn't a guard sitting there or someone who's gonna pull on the side and say that, okay, here is the ticket you have to pay for. It's just a camera. You know that you are being monitored and you're being watched, right? If you're going over speed limit, right? So obviously you're gonna get another. So there are so many different governance mechanism or methods in a country which we follow to run a smooth culture, right? And which keeps everyone protected, right? If imagine there is no governance in this country, right? So now nobody gonna follow any laws. That means there are no policies, there are no laws. Everyone is doing whatever they want, right? And there is no right and wrong, right? Policies kind of make that kind of clear, give us a clear picture. Like if somebody hits from the back, regardless, I hit my brake hard or whatever I do, if somebody hits me from the back, they are at fault, right? In US. In India, like let's say if there isn't any policy and somebody hits from the back, we're gonna be like, oh, he's gonna be like, well, you actually brake really hard, and that's why, because there isn't any policy where it's clearly defined that, hey, if somebody hits from the back, regardless whatever you had to do at the front lane, back hitting from the back is always at the fault, right? So defining a policies and laws actually help you to run your life smoothly. Similarly, having a strong governance in your company will help you to run your cybersecurity program in a way so you can see some outcome. Right now, when you have a very strong governance in your country, everyone wants to live in your country, right? Because now you know that you're safe, right? You're not gonna, it's not like two people are fighting and they both go behind the bar and we do not know whose fault it is. Here in US, whoever raised the first hand, the other hand is actually going to be in defense, right? So if that is kind of the rule exists or policy exists, we know in the cameras, if we watch that fight, we will know who raised the first hand actually is at fault, right? So if these type of laws and all those policies do not exist, and we will always gonna feel unsafe, even if we are fighting for the right situation, we will still hesitant to kind of say anything, because no matter who raised a hand first, and everyone has a liberty to do whatever, and they can just beat us up and just leave and be free. And if we in our defense hit them hard, we're gonna be at a fault. Whoever is getting more injured is actually right? That's kind of how most likely is being seen in many other countries. So all those kind of problems come when you have a kind of a weak governance, when you cannot control traffic, you cannot control your country, so which becomes a chaos, right? In a country, nobody really likes to get into a chaos. Everyone wants everything very well managed, everything very well structured. And when things are going in that direction, then obviously we as a country makes more progress, right? So similarly, from a cybersecurity, if we do not have a governance, that means we do not know if we are progressing or not, right? So we might not progress at all, and we just all we see is problems, and we just kind of give up and think that these all problems are never ending. These problems cannot be resolved. That means we are mistaken big time. So that means we are not measuring our company risk. That means we are not thinking that we could actually get compromised. It's just a buying insurance. And when we do not buy insurance, we think that we will never get into an accident, we will never die, right? But when we get an insurance, there is a slight possibility that, hey, we could get into an accident because we are going on a road. Similarly, when we open up so many ports for our customers to connect to us, or for our partners to connect to us, that means we are opening up an avenue of risk, right? So managing that risk is very, very important. In my past, I have done many audits, many assessments in the companies. I have also designed a data center for many companies, like Fortune 500 companies, for retail, financial, healthcare, pharmaceutical companies. And I have seen, if your your infrastructure, your governance is not right, then that means no matter how much budget you allocate in your company for cybersecurity or information security or compliance, you are still at risk. It's very important to having a governance while you are introducing a new cybersecurity solutions in your company, and also new cybersecurity products in your company. It's very important to having a very strong governance. Now, address your challenges, right? So if you have any sort of challenges in baseline, defining a cybersecurity baseline, you think that you do not know where to start from, then obviously you can feel free to write in your comments, or you can contact us at info@bizsecure.com, or you can reach out to Adarsh, who is our regional partner. If you are reaching out from India, Adarsh would be a right contact, and he can certainly involve us. And if you have any questions, challenges, we are happy to help. Any challenges around assessments and audits, risk assessments, cybersecurity assessments, audits, we can certainly help you with that. Policies and procedures, if you have any challenges around that, obviously these are the key areas to keep your business going, right? Keeping your business out of risk is important. So obviously reach out to others if you have any questions. I would like to hear some rating. It kind of keep me going and help me to improve, right? No one is perfect, right? So if you think that this webinar is useful, please kind of write in comments A with your comments. Or if you think that it is kind of somewhat useful, write B. If you think this is not useful, write your comments answer C. And also give us a feedback, what improvements, what areas you want us to cover, what problems you have seen in this webinar. Again, I don't want to use a webinar word. I want to make it more like a interactive session as opposed to a webinar, because webinar is something everyone kind of hosting, and I like to make it more interactive. I do not want just you guys to come and hear me. Maybe you guys might feel in some ways, hey, I have a question right now here. I want to make it more interactive, and you guys if join, and then I will take a pause before I go to a next slide. I will answer your question. We'll make it more interactive. And maybe if you guys really like it, this idea, we will come up with a platform where you guys can talk as well, and we can have a live session So again, more interactive session, less webinar. That would be my goal. But feel free to rate this webinar and also share your comments. Either you like it or do not like it. Your feedback will be very valuable and will help us to improve. And thank you so much for joining. And if you're watching this recorded session, feel free to reach out to us and others. And he's a great resource and very helpful, very proficient in finding vulnerabilities and many other security areas. All right, here is the information. You can reach out to others. His email is here and the contact number, and you can also reach out to BizSecure at info@bizsecure.com. Thank you, guys. Back to Vidhi and others.
Okay, so now I bring up the queries which we have got during the session. Assign assessment as sort of security assessment or config review as per baseline.
Sorry, can you repeat that question, please?
Assessment as sort of security assessment or config review.
Okay.
As per baseline.
Okay, so configuration review is different than the risk assessment in your company. Configuration assessment, you are going a lot more on a device level. If you have a firewall, IPS-IDS, proxy systems, or data kind of a loss prevention system, all those kind of systems, obviously how well your configuration and how well is your design is there, obviously that will kind of decide your configuration assessment, which is a lot more technical and a lot more different than just kind of assessing a high level cybersecurity assessment. So the information, the assets you are trying to protect, obviously you are buying all those latest and greatest security devices to protect your sensitive information, right? So obviously configuration is a one assessment, but on the other side, you want to assess based on that information, the sensitive information you have in your company, what controls you use to protect that information and how effectively those controls are working. That is a different assessment. So these assessments go against the baseline, the cybersecurity baseline. So let's say you have a sensitive information, those controls or the baseline will tell you, hey, you should have this level of password complexity, you should have use encryption, you should have this kind of access controls, you should so it can tell you a lot. You should take logs. Like let's say you have IPS-IDS and your IPS doesn't trigger an alert in case of intrusion. So having IPS is not really doing anything, is just looking nice on your Visio diagram, right? So and let's say if you have a firewall and it kind of has some sort of a explicit policy at the end which says permit any, right? It kind of defeats your purpose of having a firewall. And I've seen those cases in some companies in US, right, where they had a lot of nice looking Visio diagrams, and which shows to executives, to especially to CTOs and all the stakeholders, hey, we have these layer securities, but if you really dive into it and really review those, things are really, really messy. So these are two different assessments. One is a configuration level, your design level, how integrated your security design is, and then on the other side is kind of your risk assessment that could be against your compliance or cybersecurity baseline.
Okay, so another question, how to make sure that audit is correct?
So see, audit, that's a very big problem. So if you are working with a company and they bring a spreadsheet and they have only limited number of controls, let's say they tell you, hey, we use these controls, and you do not know, or even they do not know those controls are complete, and they just put it those controls based on their experience. Obviously, your audit not going to be correct, because now you are a victim of that subjective audit, right? So because they're going to probably run the audit against those controls, and let's say you hire another company, and or the final audit happens, they're going to probably ask you questions around different controls, and which probably do not have in that spreadsheet, and you're going to be again facing those all penalties and fail the audit. And that is a really, really big problem even for big companies when they kind of become a victim of these subjective audits. So now how can you ensure, if any companies have a really, really sophisticated approach and can show you all the controls and what the source of those controls, and you can easily kind of assess that by meeting with that company and ask them, hey, what is the approach you're going to take to audit our company? Show us all the PCI controls, show us the approach, how sophisticated that approach is, and also not just come and find the problems, and also if they help you to kind of address those gaps, or you can see how thorough their list is, right? So obviously if that list is right, then obviously you are most likely going through the right audit. If you have no clue, but at least ask them, what is the approach they're gonna take to audit your company. Maybe in that approach you can find out if that approach is sophisticated or not, or if they are using again spreadsheets to kind of run the audit, and those controls just coming from based on somebody's experience. And every auditor could be different, right? I come in, I might ask you 10 different questions, others come in, or someone else, other auditor come in, they might ask you different questions. So if you run into those type of problems, you're never going to be compliant, you're never going to meet all the requirements. So I would highly recommend to understand the approach they're going to take and look at their list of controls. Ask them how many controls are there, or, how they're going to help you all in that. If they walk you through with the full journey where they also find the gaps and help you to address, and at least from a tracking standpoint, if they understand a company objective, right? So obviously when you are having or conducting an audit, your goal is not to just to get the audit done. Your goal is actually to find gaps and address those gaps so you can prevent all the penalties, avoid all the penalties, financial penalties, and also risk of cybersecurity and compliance failure, right? So if that company, whichever company you're working with, they understand your objective and then help you to address that objective, then obviously you are in right hands.
Okay, another question we have is, can you share the guidelines for hardware security?
So hardware security, obviously, hardware means appliances. Security is that, because there are different categories. One is physical security. One is we kind of, the way we do it, we have broken down all different controls into a different categories, like access control, the physical, the application, right? So it kind of varies, right? So if you are referring that hardware is more like security appliances or any kind of endpoints, right? The workstations or the servers, it kind of varies. Like, are you using any sort of because system is going to be, no matter it's a firewall system or other system, it's a security system. The way controls works, they refer or address these things as a system. So obviously around that, what are your access control policies? What are your system policies? So it's going to satisfy and fall under a lot of system policies when you say hardware. Now, if you're referring more like physical security, right? So that has a completely dedicated category, like we have done for some of the schools here, like in US, right? So for that, like, what is your school's physical security is, what happens if there is so much automation here, like if the kind of some sort of a malicious activity happening, or some sort of any kind of a attack sort of thing, and how loud kids shout in those kind of situations, and how to train them. So that is also come in a physical security, right, which is a totally different assessment, and how many windows and all that kind of stuff, and how many locks. Like if you have a your server closets or your data center closets, how we can access to that, those closets where your servers are sitting, where your network equipments are sitting, all different security. It's gonna vary if you're taking physical security module, or you're taking the system security, or you're referring to endpoint security. So obviously for all these different hardware or physical, could vary, depends upon what you're trying to accomplish. I would love to, you can reach out to me separately, and I can certainly understand your hardware requirements and probably give you a more clear picture on the controls and policies, and you can have other measures in place.
Okay, so another question from Ankit Sharma. Where can we start developing cyber security baseline?
That's the first step, right? The before you do anything, so you should actually consult and assess where you are and why you really want to develop a cybersecurity baseline. Obviously you are trying to develop a baseline because there are some critical assets, there is some sensitive information which you're trying to protect. So I would say first do the classification, have your consultant understand what the sensitive information, and then have them classify, because if you do not do a information classification, your cost gonna go really high. How you design your cybersecurity, right? Even before even starting buying all the firewalls and latest greatest security products, if you do not have a baseline and you do not understand anything how your data classification is happening, then obviously you're gonna spend a lot more, because you are taking reverse approach, buying everything and then still thinking that, okay, if I'm secure or not. So defining a baseline will start based on your data classification, your data understanding, your sensitive, your company requirements. That's where the baseline will start, and that baseline also can be determined that it is how kind of thorough this baseline is going to be based on your sensitive information. But this should be actually the first step to kind of meet with someone to kind of understand what your information, what you're trying to do, basically what you're trying to accomplish. That can help you to start with, but this should be the first step.
Okay, someone asks, if possible, can we address these two challenge following MSP for POS devices? PCI provides the MSP, but their implementation or continuation, better to say control implementation, several times becomes doubtful. As for POS device, many MSP would not be based on controls, it are also based on applications side too. So he's saying to address this point.
Okay, so obviously there are many different areas to cover in this, but if you are using any kind of a MSP, if you're referring like a management company, you can certainly leverage that company. It goes back to the same thing, right? So kind of you are kind of offloading something which you think that you do not have expertise in house, and when you offload to some another company or third party company, you have to ensure the same thing, that how well their approach is, how sophisticated their approach is. Are they aligned with your company objective? Are they aligned with your vision? Right, majority of time what happens, you just kind of ask, yes, we have some audit challenges, or we just have this challenge, and now the third party, the company you bring in to help you out with it, their focus is only to deliver that, right? If they are not aligned with your vision, that what you are trying to accomplish by doing that, then there is always going to be a gap, because now they're going to be like, okay, this is what covers in our SOW scope of work, and we're just getting that done, but that's not meeting your company objective. So when you're literally bringing someone as a partner, and you do not want to establish a partnership until and unless they are in sync with your vision. Once they are in sync with your vision, then you can offload your stuff and think that, okay, this partner is going to take care of this whole initiative. And it is very important when you bring any partner on board, try to see if they are actually trying to understand your vision, or they're just trying to solve a one portion of your problem. If they're just trying to solve a one portion of your problem, that means they cannot be a good partner, because they only gonna care and focus in one area. They have no concern, or they have no kind of attachment of what you are really trying to accomplish, or they're not going to be in sync with your objective. So it is very important you go with any kind of a management company, so you certainly see if they are in sync with your vision.
Okay,
And
another question.
just to add on that, if there are some other points in that question, feel free to reach out to me. We can have a session, or reach out to others, and he can set up a session, and we can definitely address those questions as well in detail.
Are they clubbing security assessment and NIST?
So you're cutting off. Sorry, Vidhi. Can you go again, please? Vidhi, still there? Others, do you want to take the question, or anyone? Hello? Others or Vidhi, are you guys still on? Hello? Hello? Hello, Vidhi? Are you still there? Hi, Vidhi.
Hello.
Hi. Yes, Adarsh. I think Vidhi probably dropped off.
Yes, I think she is facing some technical issues.
Okay.
So I think we can conclude today's session here.
Okay. Very good. All right. So I think if you guys have any more questions, feel free to reach out to others, or you can reach out to us directly as well, info@BitSecure. We will certainly set up a session and help you. And we can also perform a free basic assessment as well. If you guys have environment, and you just want to get the free assessment done, like the basic assessment, we can certainly help you with that as well. We generally offer that for great cause companies, like a nonprofit, and like other some kind of a churches or temples or other places like that, nonprofit. So you can let us know, and we can certainly conduct a basic assessment for free as well. Reach out to others for more information, and also let us know if you have any other questions. Thank you so much from my end. I think Vidhi is back on. Anything else you would like to add, Vidhi?
Sir, add her
Sharing
to
your
the speak.
valuable insight.
Okay, I just added you, Vidhi, now. Go ahead.
Okay, sir. Sorry for the inconvenience. Thank you, sir, for giving your valuable insight on cybersecurity baseline. We have come to end of our webinar. I would like to appreciate everyone who made this meeting possible. You can connect with us after this session through our CyberEra website. Feel free to visit. It's my pleasure being with you all. Thank you all once again for coming and joining us. We hope to see you again next time in the next session. Have a great day ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.